Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories of the hour. European and NATO sources say Russian military jets violate Estonia's airspace. The incident adds to growing tensions between Moscow and the alliance, as well as raising fear of the Ukraine war spilling into Europe. China's Xi Jinping and US President Donald Trump hold a planned phone call to discuss trade tensions and the future of TikTok. State media in Beijing confirmed the two leaders are speaking today. The Israeli military warns it will use unprecedented force in Gaza City, urging residents to flee south. The army closes the main Salah al-Din evacuation route after 48 hours, saying only the Al-Rashid Street remains open. A British couple freed by the Taliban arrive in Qatar after nearly 8 months in detention. Peter and Barbara Reynolds land in Doha and emotionally embrace family on the tarmac after their release mediated by the Gulf Emirate. According to Russian state media, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov will be meeting US Secretary of State Marco Rubio at the United Nations next week. The reports also state that a bilateral meeting is being planned between both the two leaders. The European Union unveils a new sanctions package with Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas saying Russian LNG imports will be phased out by January of 2027. The move brings forward the ban by 1 year. Nepal's new interim Prime Minister, Shishula Karki, promises to fight corruption, create jobs and improve living standards after youth-led protests toppled the government. She acknowledges the deadly unrest was fueled by public frustration over corruption. Iraqi counter-terrorism forces confirmed the killing of senior ISIS commander Omar Abdul Qadir Bassem in a joint operation with the US-led coalition in Syria. He is accused of masterminding attacks, including the Iran embassy bombing in Lebanon. Now we have some breaking news this hour where tensions are rising in Eastern Europe as Estonia reports a serious security breach. 3 Russian fighter MiG-31 jets entered Estonian airspace without authorization and stayed for 12 minutes. Estonia's defense minister described the incident as unprecedentedly brutal. In response, the Estonian government has handed a formal protest to Russia's top diplomat in the country. NATO and European officials have confirmed the violation, highlighting growing concerns over regional stability. Okay, that is breaking news coming from the east of Europe that Russian jets are now have been in Estonian airspace for a reported 12 minutes. Breaking news from Eastern Europe. This, of course, follows 2 previous incursions by drones, both in Poland and Romania. This is, however, the first time fighter jets have been reported to be flying in European and NATO airspace. Some say that Moscow is very much testing NATO's response here when it comes to these incursions. Of course, this is very, very much early on. Estonia have responded to this. However, we are sure that we're going to get some more responses from this incursion from Moscow. We'll see how Europe and, of course, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which Estonia is a member of, responds to this. If you have just joined us, we are, of course, covering the breaking news that 3 Russian jets have been reportedly flying in Estonian airspace, Eastern Europe. Okay, we will of course bring you more news on that as soon as we get it. But next we move on over to the Middle East, where the Israeli military announced that approximately 480,000 Palestinians have fled southward from Gaza City since late August. This mass movement comes as Israel intensifies its ground offensive, aiming to capture Gaza City, the territory's largest urban centre. The United Nations had estimated around 1 million people lived in and around Gaza City at the end of August, and the ongoing conflict has forced nearly half of the population to relocate in search of safety amid escalating military operations. Let's have a look at what some of the displaced Palestinians had to say.
طلعنا من الزيتونة ورحنا على نابلسي. من نابلسي الطيارة زعقت هذا الكابتر اطلعوا على الجنوب. هنا جينا عندنا 3 أيام واحنا بالسيارة مش ملاقيين وسع. هنا نصبنا في الشارع وقعدنا. فيش حدا مطلع لنا. الضرب والخبط وهذا ها بدنا نطلع. مش عارف وين اخريتها يودونا. هذه مش حياة هذه. والله يا عمي ما هي حياة هذه موت.
الشارع دشرنا اراضينا ودورنا وحالنا كله اتدمر وقع علينا. كنا في مدارس والمدارس وقعت علينا. طلعنا من تحت الموت. ذنبه ايش هذا؟ احنا خشينا 7 اكتوبر ولا احنا حماس ولا ايش؟ افهم مين فينا حماس تطلعوا مين فينا حماس؟ الاطفال هدول ذنبهم هدول حماس برضه ذنبهم الاطفال هيك تشربوا معانا. ضاعت حياتهم وضاعت تعليمهم بس بفكروا الصبح بالحطب بالميه بس هي التفكير اللي احنا فيه. هي اللي عشنا عشانه بس.
Civilians in Gaza City. As we've said, 480 people have now known to have fled. That's around half of the population of Gaza City. How does Israel assess the proportionality of the damage it is doing here, especially when the Israeli Defense Minister is using the language like it is going to use unprecedented force, like it's going to set Gaza on fire when the humanitarian toll is so large coming out of the Gaza Strip?
Let's put it this way. Hamas has turned all of Gaza basically into coochie tunnels of military proportion. When Israel went into Gaza, it aimed to end the periodic wars that Hamas would start. Every single ceasefire that has been in place since 2009 has been violated by Hamas. So this is about ending Hamas's complete control, and the only way to do it is to go in with force. So this is more than just proportional. This is the only way to do things. Should we leave 400,000 people in Gaza City to be human shields for Hamas? I think that we should, if you want to talk about any sort of genocide, it's the Hamas genocide.
John, Israel violated the ceasefire back in March, which of course ended the hostage exchanges that we had seen previously and resumed the fighting. Of course, that the tunnels are come out of Israeli statements. We do know that there are tunnels under Gaza. However, how many there are is very much the Israelis because there is no international press let inside Gaza. Of course, John, what can we expect from this offensive? How is Israel ensuring it is meeting these obligations when it comes to international law? And how are you seeing Israel fees on the world stage when it comes to its image and how it's dealing with that?
We talk about Hamas is abiding by international law. There's an extensive tunnel all over Gaza City, under apartment buildings, under schools, under hospitals, in violation of international law. The existence of those military tunnels under the 1949 Geneva Convention negates any protection that they would enjoy under conventional laws of war. I mean, Hamas talks in its propaganda about its use of human shields. So I think that by moving these civilians out of the way is the best thing we can do to ensure that the obligations. As far as Israel was concerned, the ceasefire was predicated on Hamas not dragging its feet and releasing all the hostages. How hard is that? I mean, Hamas doesn't have an accounting of the hostages that it took, and it took the hostages to be human shields.
Okay, John, thank you very much for joining us. Pleasure having you on the programme. As always, we now stay in the region next, but move over to the occupied West Bank, where Israeli forces have struck down a building in the village of Surda near Ramallah, firing an Indega missile at what they claimed was a hideout for Palestinian suspects. The military later announced the arrest of a terrorist cell accused of firing rockets in the region. Meanwhile, Israel shut the crucial Allenby Bridge crossing to Jordan after a driver bringing aid from Jordan killed 2 Israeli soldiers. The Jordan River crossing is also closed, with the Rabin crossing remaining open only for workers. Now we move on to another major development of the day, where the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has hailed the vital role by Qatar in winning the release of a British couple held by Taliban authorities in Afghanistan. He welcomed the release of Peter Reynolds and his wife Barbie, who had been detained in February, by saying this long-awaited news will come as a huge relief to them and their family. Let's take a listen in to what the family of the couple had to say.
I'm overwhelmed with gratitude and relief that we have our parents back after their incomprehensible detention by the Taliban. This is a moment of immense joy for our family, and we are deeply thankful to everyone who played a role in securing their release. I especially want to express my heartfelt appreciation to His Highness the Emir of Qatar for his leadership and compassion.
Now we move back to Europe, where Ukraine is making progress in its talks with the United States and European allies to formalise binding security guarantees as part of its efforts to end the war with Russia. The First Deputy Foreign Minister, Sergei Kyslytsya, emphasised that US support remains crucial despite strong European backing. Let's take a listen in to what he said.
I think that we are making progress, and I may agree with those who say that the progress is not enough or not as expedient as we would wish it to be, but we do make progress. And I think that the breakthrough moment was during the meeting in Washington, D.C., when the Americans, President Trump himself, reconfirmed that the Americans would be part of the security guarantees.
As Ukraine faces mounting pressure from Russian forces in the east and south, Kyiv is intensifying strikes on Russia's energy infrastructure using long-range drones. Kyslytsya warned European allies that Russian aggression will not stop at Ukraine's borders, urging them to take bold decisions to ensure their own security. Okay, we're now joined by our guest, Scott Faulkner. He's the head of Eagle Enterprises, a security firm, joining us live from Washington, D.C. in the United States. Thank you very much, Scott, for joining us here on the programme. Scott, when it comes to peace in Ukraine, why is US support considered indispensable, even with a strong European backing?
Key is that The United States is viewed as the bellwether. It is still viewed as the biggest world power. And to have the U.S. not involved in either discussions or a solution probably would basically stop the solution from being implemented or lasting. The big concern is that Trump continues to be less than aggressive with Putin, and a lot of people are still concerned that for some reason the United States is not being as aggressive as it should be on sanctions, not being as aggressive as it should be on disrupting Russia's oil, except through secondary tariffs. But America, being literally the titular head of NATO, the biggest world power, that it has to be on the chessboard somewhere.
Yes, indeed, Scott. And do you think, of course, you've mentioned and cited Trump's, some people would find alarming closeness to Putin. How realistic is it that Washington will commit to a long-term security assurance, given the US's domestic politics right now?
At this point, I think that any security assurances will probably be there in writing. If there's any boots on the ground, such as a security buffer or other or no-fly zones, I think that Trump would be depending on his other NATO allies in Europe to actually implement that frontline solution. I do not see America committing troops or air power to either no-fly zones or to a buffer.
Yes, Scott, thank you very much. Do stay with us. We have further updates. Finland's President Alex Stubb has reassured the public that the country is well prepared to handle the growing threat of drones. He highlighted Finland's efforts to strengthen its defence capabilities, particularly in drone technology. Finland will also participate in NATO's Eastern Sentry operation, focusing on the southeastern flank alongside Romania and Poland. Stubb pointed out that there's much to learn from Ukraine's experience in drone defence, noting that Russia may be testing Finland's readiness by deploying drones. As tensions rise, the president emphasised Finland's commitment to maintaining its security and responding decisively to any threats. But Scott Faulkner joins us once again. Scott, at the start of this hour, we reported jets that have just encroached in Estonia's airspace for 12 minutes. However, prior to that, there was two incursions, one into Poland, which saw 19 drones, and then another time a couple of days later in Romania. What can you tell us about Russia's stance here? What is it trying to do here to these NATO allies in Europe, and is it testing their response? What is Moscow trying to achieve by doing this?
Well, certainly he's testing their response, but the other part is he's trying to test their resolve. We might remember during the Cold War when the USSR basically intimidated Finland into what we called Finlandization, where Finland acted as more of a neutral party during the Cold War. And I think that that's, at a minimum, that's what Putin is doing. He's looking at his western borders and saying that whether it's the Baltics, whether it's Finland, whether it's Poland, he's trying to intimidate them to a point where the domestic political environment might shift toward a softer view of Russia. I think that he's, in essence, barking up the wrong tree, because when Finland joined NATO, 80% of its population was in favor of joining NATO. So I think that this testing of resolve is basically strengthening the resolve.
How significant is Finland's participation in NATO's Eastern Sentry operation alongside Romania and Poland?
Very significant, because it shows that there's been a lot of talk about Plan A, Plan B, should Finland be directly threatened beyond these tests by Russia. Plan A was Finland depending on the United States to come to its defense. Plan B was basically the France and other NATO countries to come to their assistance. And so having Finland involved in these maneuvers is basically strengthening Finland's not only political, but in this case, military command structure bonds to the rest of the NATO countries. And so that plan B that Finland has been talking about is now being manifested in these maneuvers.
Now, Scott, is Russia likely to escalate drone operations against Finland as retaliation for its NATO alignment, do you think?
I'm sure that Russia will be continuing to escalate. I mean, they may politically try to say that it's in response to the maneuvers, but Putin has a master plan. His master plan is to rebuild the Soviet Union, to rebuild the Warsaw Pact, and he'll use any pretense to do that. Now, whether he does it with boots on the ground and Russian flags flying over territory, or whether he does it like that Finlandization, intimidation and trying to influence domestic politics in these border countries, will be yet to be seen. But Putin doesn't need an excuse, even if he tries to use an excuse.
Yes, Scott Faulkner, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. Pleasure to talk to you, as always. We now move on. Hawaii's Kalena volcano is spewing lava during its latest eruption, according to the United States Geological Survey. Kilauea is one of the world's most active volcanoes and has been erupting periodically since December of 2024. Most episodes have continued for around a day or less and have been separated by pauses in eruptive activity lasting generally several days. This is reportedly the volcano's 33rd episode. The volcano has erupted dozens of times since 1952, but eruptive activity was nearly continuous along the volcano's East Rift Zone from 1983 to 2018. Well, that is all that we have time for, but we will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world. Thank you.